On August 19, 2020, a relatively unknown studio to the west named GameScience Studio released a 13-minute gameplay trailer for the new game entitled Black Myth Wukong, and it really took the internet by storm. It came out around the same time Elden Ring was announced, but not a whole lot was actually known about it, so people were chomping at the bit for their next Souls experience, and what Black Myth showed back in 2020 was really impressive in its combat, its scope, and especially its visuals. And now with Elden Ring come and gone, it's a game with a lot to prove. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about Black Myth Wukong, the next most ambitious game. So a lot of people were immediately interested in Black Myth Wukong, and from everything we've seen, it seems like the developers are really serious about making a real contender to Dark Souls, and now Elden Ring's crown, and while we can't say for certain how it's all going to turn out, it's one game that I'm personally really hoping turns out good. Everything we've seen thus far suggests a pretty impressive and ambitious take on the Souls formula, with a unique perspective and visual style that feels really fresh in this genre. Firstly, instead of the standard European dark fantasy setting, something we've seen quite a bit of over the last, million action RPGs that follow this formula, this game does something different. Based partially on the legendary Chinese novel Journey to the West, Black Myth Wukong has probably a main character of Sun Wukong, aka the Monkey King, as he helps guide the Buddhist monk Shanzhang to the west. We say probably because there's actually 3 different monkeys shown in these trailers, and any of them could be the actual Monkey King, so it's also possible you're playing as a different character here, but at this point there's really no indication. Journey to the West is a story that's well known in China, but for most people in the US, you probably know it better as Dragon Ball, which is actually a very loose retelling of that story. Now, the setting alone is interesting enough, but it's actually the gameplay that really got people's attention. The game is probably best described as a Souls-like, and you can probably see that there's a number of similarities. You got your 3 bars, a health bar, magic meter, and stamina bar. Combat's primarily over the shoulder, and there's even what looks like sort of an Estus flask system where you drink from a gourd to regain lost health. There is nothing particularly ambitious about those things, but there's a lot more going on here outside of the basics. For starters, this game looks incredible. The most recent Unreal Engine 5 trailer really flexes its muscles with some amazing stuff like snow that gets blown away by special attacks and small but really impressive animations like when the creature in the opening drops fruit on an enemy's head, waking it up, and the part of the trailer where leaves realistically react to like your staff spinning. It's visually just incredibly impressive. Every environment and enemy they show looks completely amazing, and there's no dearth in content here. Just from the few trailers we've seen, there's a snowy temple, a desert ruin, a dense forest, and some really strange places like this area that looks like it's just a mountain of giant stone statue heads. It's a Souls-like that looks truly next-gen in a way that few games really do, even now when we're more than a year into the PS5 and Xbox Series X. So while we're not going to be talking about the graphics all the way through, just look at the footage they've put up so far. Like, you can see it with your own eyes. It's really, really impressive, especially for what is, at least to us in the West, a totally unknown developer. The visuals are definitely next-gen, and the gameplay looks pretty next-gen as well. The first thing we can see in the original trailer from back in 2020 was this golden cicada. It's actually one of the many transformations that you can take on in Black Myth. In the Journey to the West, the Monkey King had the power of transformation, and it looks like that's kind of a key feature here. In the first trailer alone, your character transforms into a giant beast man to take on a bunch of enemies, and a warrior with a flaming double-sided blade to fight off the wolf boss at the end. And there's actually quite a bit to take away from these transformations as well. For one, they're not just for combat, like the cicada and later a bird transformation show, and you probably earn them from defeating enemies. The transformation in the wolf boss fight looks like the enemy you fight from the start of the trailer, who when defeated drops a weapon that you can collect. Other transformations also look like enemy forms, which means they could be a collectible in some way or another. There's probably a collectible aspect to them. There's probably many of them that are optional or randomly obtained, but right now we don't know a lot about how the system actually works. We're kind of just speculating because we're obviously pretty interested in this. Now, these transformations seem like they could have a profound effect on the gameplay, and seems like a lot of variety and options might come from it. How you actually transform, I'm not sure. There seems to be a time limit anytime you're in a new form, but the timing seems pretty generous and also seems different for each form, so it's possible the game will let you use these abilities pretty often. Of course, all we've really seen are early gameplay trailers, so how this thing actually works, it might be really different in the final game. We don't know yet. At its core, the combat obviously is pretty Souls-inspired, but going back and looking at the trailers they've released so far, it does seem different enough to stand out. One important change is that in general, the camera seems more zoomed out than what I've seen in most Souls games. The combat seems a little more action-oriented, like there's some distinct moves and abilities that are on cooldown. I'm not sure there's a traditional block either, because as far as I can tell, it looks like there's a special ability that allows for a parry, and that's kind of it. Like there might be something else, but it doesn't look like it. Going along with what looks like a Neo-inspired stance system, where you can change your stance to mix up your standard attack. So that, like, there's a lot going on here, and while I'm not 100% sure how it all mixes together, we can make a few inferences. The special abilities also look like they'll mix things up. They're on a cooldown on top of costing energy to use, but you can do some pretty impressive stuff like freeze an enemy in place or generate a temporary shield that gives the player time to heal themselves. Certain moves look pretty crazy, but they may not even be special moves at all. Like they seem like they're normal parts of your character's moveset. The speed your character moves, combined with the frenetic combat, gives the game a little bit of Devil May Cry energy on top of the Souls stuff. At least what we've seen from the trailers indicates that. Clearly, the heavy Souls inspiration isn't the only thing going on here, and that's also exciting because while there have been attempts, not a whole lot of games have done a great job combining other genres with the Souls-like, and it kind of seems pretty possible here. They've only shown one weapon so far, and that's the staff, but it seems like these alternate forms are also there to make up for a lack of weapons that you could experience in your original form. The possible focus on just one weapon gives the game a little more of a Sekiro vibe than a Souls one, but they also may just be holding off on revealing more weapons. Either way, the trailers seem to show plenty of variation in the combat of Black Myth, so even if you only have one weapon for the whole game, it probably won't matter a lot. I mean, did you see that move where the staff extends crazy high and then used to knock the dragon out of the air? If that's something you just do whenever you want, that's exciting. There's a flow to the combat that definitely screams Souls, and a lot of the bosses they've shown so far have attacks that are right out of the Souls boss playbook. Clearly, like, it's a big looming influence here. But probably the most un-Souls-like thing we've noticed is the amount of damage your character can take. It may just be for the trailers, but some of these boss attacks look like they knock most of your health out of a Souls game, but they don't really hit you too hard. It's probably just the difficulty adjusted to make the game easier to demo. Like, they want to be able to show off a lot of the different functions. But a less difficult Souls experience also isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a really enjoyable game, and in terms of how difficult it is, I wouldn't really rank it in even mid-tier in terms of Souls-likes. It's still a really enjoyable experience, though. However, it's also a little different than what you would probably come to expect just based on a cursory look at this game, so we'll see exactly how that pans out. They've also come out and said that the game's going to support co-op in some way as well, which is great. I don't know if that's going to work like Souls and involve summoning or be some kind of drop-in, drop-out co-op thing, a la Journey or something like that. Not much is known about that, but it's something to look forward to information on. In all seriousness, if what some of the stuff shown in the trailers is real, there's some pretty crazy set-piece moments in the game. Like this insane part at the end of the trailer where you're fighting off an entire army of guys with the extending staff, like sending dozens of enemies flying, like it's a Dynasty Warriors game, the world's best looking, most detailed and gorgeous Dynasty Warriors game. There's a lot of just straight up cool stuff in what we've seen in the trailer, like the part at the very end where you're facing off like 4 gigantic statues, but these kinds of moments leave us wondering how all of this is going to come together and be one thing. What is that thing going to be exactly? Like, we've seen a lot of headlines describe Black Myth as an open world game, but there's not really any evidence of it. In a Q&A with IGN China from 2020, the developer said the game is about 15 hours in length, with most open world games being a lot longer than that. Everything we've seen in the trailer seems pretty linear too. There's cutscenes and set piece moments, and that kind of feels more like a linear action game. So I think everything we've seen so far suggests the game is more straightforward adventure, maybe with some exploration elements, like maybe of sort of a zone type experience rather than an actual open world experience. On the other hand, the second trailer and the Chinese New Year trailer showed just a large amount of stuff, and it's kind of hard to imagine a game with all that stuff in it being less than 20 hours, just from how many unique bosses and enemies they've revealed so far. Like, if you remember, before launch, there's a quote going around that said you could finish Elden Ring in about 30 hours, and that ended up being silly. It takes most people around 100 hours to actually beat Elden Ring, so who really knows? I don't even know if there was an actual attributable, real, citable quote that said the 30 hours thing, or it was just a rumor going around. Same goes for this. We're relying on translation, etc., etc. But long story short, the developers have not said one way or the other on open world, so all we're doing here is speculating. That said, from the trailers, it looks fairly linear. Even moments you might point out that show the game could be open world are like sections where you're flying as a bird, and that could easily be a scripted moment. That isn't to say that this game doesn't look ambitious. It's just good to have more realistic expectations about things. It's important to remember that the studio that's making this game has never worked on something on this kind of a scale. The only games they're credited to have worked on are 2 mobile games, so they're pretty much unknown, especially in this capacity. There's a reason for that, though. Mobile games make up about 80% of the entire video game market in China, so games made primarily for PC and consoles are kind of niche, and even getting them made isn't something you can just do because you want to, because these are expensive to make. This is a big AAA looking game, and again, that is a small part of the market over there. Without a big backlog of games to look back on, I think the developers are trying to let the game speak for itself, and considering the response to everything they've shown, this was a smart move. That's not to say there's no cause for concern whatsoever. We have no way at all of knowing what the final game will actually look like right now, but the trailers are filled with innovative looking combat and stunning visual design, so if the game is even close to being as good as what they've shown so far, it could really be a game to beat. Black Myth Wukong is one of the most ambitious and best looking games to come out of the developing Souls-like genre, and what they're showing us is asking us to set our expectations pretty high. This is a category filled with copycats that look very similar. Even ones that are considered heavy hitters are identifiably derivative of From Software's sort of master template, so to speak. So, being that this game stands out as something unique and interesting is itself impressive. Even if what we're seeing right now has to be pared down, the fact that they've got ideas that look like they work, that don't look like copycat stuff, makes me really anticipate this. Like, I can't wait to give it a try when it eventually comes out. Now, there's no set release date, as the developers have pretty much said it'll come out when it's done, but hopefully the 2023 release window they proposed in their IGN interview, which admittedly isn't recent, is a release window that holds, and we'll get this game sometime next year. Everyone here at gameranx's fingers are crossed for this one. It's something that we've been keeping an eye on, and the recent stuff that's come out has really been impressive. If this is indicative of the final product, we're in for something good. And that's what we know about this game so far. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.